Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. I'm going to continue here where I left off at the end of the last video. BBC to be urged to end news blackout on Palestinian hunger strikes. It says in a statement, the Innovative Minds campaign group said the demonstration will be held on the 7th of April to blast the broadcaster BBC for enforcing a reporting blackout on any coverage of the Palestinian prisoners who have been refusing food for months over the conditions of their detention by the Israeli regime. The rally, dubbed over 250 days of silence on plight of the Palestinian hunger strikers, as part of a series of protests outside the BBC. More than 4,500 Palestinian prisoners are held in Israeli prisons, many of them without charges or trial. Rights groups fear for hunger strikers in Bahrain. Says 13 pro-democracy activists were sentenced to 10 years in jail Tuesday in Bahrain over allegations they attacked police officers in the latest fallout from protests that rocked the country for more than 2 years. So you don't hear much of that. Also, this same thing with Myanmar. UN must match words with deeds on the Rohingya plight. The United Nations must translate its condemnations of the ongoing violence against the Muslims in Myanmar into concrete actions and impose sanctions against the country. They say these are statements from the UN acknowledging what is happening, condemning what is happening, but falling short of taking action about what's happening. UN's Ban Ki-moon, recommends putting 11,200 peacekeepers in Mali. He recommended as many as 11,200 UN peacekeepers and special counter-terrorist unit will be deployed to Mali to take over the fight against Islamic insurgents in the landlocked African nation, relieving France. French intervention in the Central African Republic, says here, extremely troubling. Analysis describes the French intervention in the Central African Republic as extremely troubling, asserting that it was neither wanted by the Africans nor blessed by the United Nations. This comes after France just sent some 350 troops to the Central African Republic to counter the Salika fighters who have taken control of this capital city. British troops arrive in Mali as French war goes on. Says they've arrived in Mali as the French-led war in the West African country rages on. 40 British soldiers, which are part of a team of 500 troops from the European countries, will help develop the Malians' army's infantry and artillery skills, they said on Wednesday. Men live in Guantanamo animal cages will never get trials. The Guantanamo Bay hunger strike has entered its 47th day with no end in sight, according to the prison's director of public affairs. 26 inmates are refusing food, with 8 detainees receiving enteral sustenance, basically by a feeding tube, kind of like in India where they force them to eat, where there's people that are starving. So it just goes to show you that's just them, the state, and that enforcing their will upon you. So it says here, this lieutenant colonel said the last time I saw my clients was between February 25th and March 8th. And he said he was shocked at the condition. They lost almost 40 pounds. And he says, I can imagine we're getting near to the end when something serious is going to happen. A woman that ran CIA's torture operations picked as clandestine service chief. The new head of the U.S. spy agency has appointed a woman involved in running the CIA's detention and torture program and destroying videotapes of the interrogation sessions as the chief of its clandestine service. The woman, the first female to head the CIA's clandestine service in the agency's history, is reportedly a veteran spy that remains undercover and cannot be named, has gotten the top job on an acting basis. From February of last year, a more peaceful world of women were in charge. The editor is Joseph Nye, a former U.S. assistant to Secretary of Defense, and professor at Harvard, and the author of The Future of Power. So, Project Syndicate. Sounds very nice. It says, would the world be more peaceful if women were in charge? Challenging new book by the Harvard University psychologist Steven Pinker says that the answer is yes. Presents data showing that human violence, while still very much with us today, has been gradually declining. Moreover, he says that the overlong sweep of history, women have been and will be a pacifying force. Traditional war is a man's game, and tribal women never band together to raid neighboring villages. Now, apparently they just drone bomb them. As mothers, women have evolutionary incentives to maintain peaceful conditions in which to nurture their offspring and ensure that their genes survive into the next generation. Then we have clashes erupt at Paris anti-gay marriage protest. Dozens arrested as last-ditch effort to block a marriage law. Massive anti-gay marriage protests in Paris ended in violence yesterday as police used tear gas and batons on activists who tried to get past police barricades Hundreds of thousands of people have traveled to the French capital for what was seen as a final protest before legislation allowing gay marriage and adoption is passed by the French Senate. So yeah, many of them are discontent with Holland's failure to improve unemployment. So don't worry about getting people back to work. Let's worry about a minority, right? Gays and stuff, gay rights. In Russia they get met with the same type of protest, but in America's different. Yes, they do have protests, but they're very, very, very limited. Red symbol of gay support on Facebook is awesome. So it says here, critics say it's a meaningless gesture. Those red equal signs popping up all over Facebook and Twitter in support of gay rights have their share of critics. Meaningless gesture that accomplishes nothing. But it goes on and says the critics are missing the point. It says here that it's an easy gesture to make out, and one reaches only your Facebook friends instead of, say, the Supreme Court Justice. North Dakota bans abortions if there's a heartbeat. So they signed a legislation bill that would ban most abortions if a fetal heartbeat can be detected, something that can happen as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. And I just covered research about that. World's smallest blood monitoring implant tells your smartphone when you're about to have a heart attack. A team of scientists in Switzerland have developed the world's smallest medical implant to monitor critical chemicals in the blood. I'm sure there are criminal chemicals such as the aerosols that they're spraying. So using Bluetooth that will emit probably radio frequencies, the device can then transmit the data to a smartphone for tracking. Bill Gates seeks to help the world's poor with next generation condom. Bill and Melinda Gates Eugenics Foundation is offering big bucks and hoping of spurring the development of new condom for men and women. So, church post strip for me sign near strip club. The Birmingham pastor gets his message across. The billboard near a gentleman's club in Birmingham, Alabama screams out strip for me to passerbys, which is notable mainly because it was put up not by the club but by a local church. So, it says it's paraphrasing a line from the Bible's book of Hebrews 1 in which people are asked to strip away their sins and encumbrances to serve Jesus. So he says that it's an attention-grabbing stunt, has a simple purpose. He wants guys to think twice about going into the club and spend time with their families instead. Is Victoria's Secret marketing to teens with their new Bright Young Things line? People in the comment boards say, no, it's been corrected that it's for college students. Me personally, I think it's directed towards what they say, teens and tweens. You can try to kid yourself, but that's who they're marketing to as well. So it says, is this ad aimed at college-age women or high school girls? Probably both. It's you got to think about it from their perspective. It's cheap advertising to just hit all those different marketing demographic age groups. At first glance, the line looks like it's for college students with a focus on spring break beach essentials, but the new Bright Young Things line at Victoria's Secret is actually aimed at a much younger audience. They say teens and tweens. So it says here that parents are outraged by the spring break themed ads, pointing out that the models look really, really young and accusing the lingerie giant of sexualizing young girls. College-age women, on the other hand, are shocked that younger kids are interested in Victoria's Secret's products at all. I doubt that very much either. Victoria's Secret Pink is a brand for college-age women, the company said in a statement on Monday. Despite recent rumors, we have no plans to introduce a collection for younger women. So, it says here that would be fine if Victoria's Secret executive hadn't already said otherwise. I guess back in January at a conference, she said when somebody's 15 or 16 years old, what do they want to be? They want to be older and they want to be cool like the girl in college. That's part of the magic of what we do at Pink. So it doesn't really matter whether it's targeting college students or not. The fact is that when most of these young girls grow up, I hate to say it, but the majority of them will be wearing this stuff, I Dare You and Wild, and feeling lucky on their underwear. I mean, that's just a fact. So like I said in yesterday's video, the damage has been done over generations. So, it's up to the parents. You can't ask for things to be banned or complain to Victoria's Secret. They're not going to tell you the truth. Student loan write-offs hit $3 billion in first 2 months of the year. Banks wrote off $3 billion of student loan debt. So this is what they want to be, right? Everyone wants to be a college student. It says it's $3 billion of student loan debt in the first 2 months of 2013, up more than 36% from the year ago, as many graduates remain jobless, underemployed, or cash-strapped in a slow U.S. economic recovery. They're going to keep calling it a recovery, even when it's like 2050 and we're living in a friggin' wasteland. Oh, the recovery is right around the corner. Academia is eating its young, so it's difficult for anyone in academia, from teaching to funding to publishing to translating research to intellectual property, collaboration to jobs to cheating to culture. The entire science stack is a miserable process. So I said in the past you can get away with avoiding this reality and still manage to be a productive scientist. So it goes on here and it says here that today, however, there's an entire generation of young scientists who are taught to believe that this is just how science works and it's doing incredible harm to us all. It says the result is that academia is eating its young. It says I've met countless brilliant inventors in the past, passionate teachers and genuinely curious people who are care deeply about their area of research. Instead, it's the politics, the inefficiency, and the inbred hostility towards change has driven these incredible people out of academia. Psychiatry Bible DSM-5 will add PTSD for preschoolers. So when the new manual is published in May, a small section could alter the lives of millions of children so they can get them on Ritalin and all types of pharmaceutical drugs. It's the Bible for psychiatrists, so pretty interesting. PTSD for kindergartners. Greenland ice melt overestimated due to satellite data algorithm issue. So here we go again with the algorithm issue. That's what it was. It was an algorithm. The melt extent algorithm used by Greenland's ice sheet today has been overestimating the ice melt, and as a result, daily images posted on this site in February and March may have indicated melt where none occurred. Even though I've covered articles in the last 6 months about how the South Pole, the Antarctica basically is growing, that they keep talking about the Arctic and the North Pole, right? How it's melting. Scientists, long winter in the U.S., the result of melting Arctic ice caps. So you can't make this stuff up, seriously. Melting sea ice, exposing huge parts of the ocean to the atmosphere, explains extreme weather, both hot and cold. Climate scientists, basically alarmists, have linked the massive snowstorms and bitter spring weather now being experienced across Britain and large parts of Europe and North America to the dramatic loss of Arctic sea ice. So again, if we are heading into ice age, they're not helping. They're not helping anybody by spraying aerosols and warming and heating and create a microwave greenhouse effect with all these chemicals and aerosols and harping the ionosphere. They're not helping people get acclimated to this change. Speaking of polar bears, they're actually blaming them. So as earthworms are blamed for global warming, ecologists suggest killing polar bears. Already having to suffer its identity being abused by global warming alarmists as a symbol of man-made climate change, now the polar bears have to be or fear of being euthanized by overzealous conservationists. So it says here, a controlled reduction of population size through harvest might be necessary to ensure both human safety and a viable but smaller polar bear population as a result of declining habitat. The way these conservationists intend to go about this is to humanely euthanize polar bears who are unlikely to survive due to global warming. The UK's coldest spring since 1963 claims 5,000 lives. I covered this before. Pensioners worst affected, and experts say final toll could be horrendous. They say unusually harsh winter could have cost thousands of people's lives. Bitter cold, financial inability to heat homes kill more Britons. Says Britain's cold snap is soared by more than 2,500 as far as the death toll this year compared with past years as people struggle to keep their homes warm. Scientists warn of ice age, cites new peer-reviewed Russian study. Says, mentioning the lethal 100-year record-smashing spring cold and snow spreading across Europe over the past month has for the most part been avoided like the plague by Germany's mainstream media. So it goes on here, as the record cold and frost has killed thousands and cost billions. One scientist stunned the rest of German mainstream media with a piece titled "Scientists Warn of Ice Age." Russian scientists are finding that solar activity is weakening considerably to an extent that was last seen several hundred years ago, the Little Ice Age, according to scientists. I've heard this before about Oregon, about how they could be having big tsunamis hit. A 26-foot tsunami could hit California. Study looks at Cascadia subduction zone. An 8.0 or 9.0 magnitude earthquake would trigger tsunami in Northern California, Oregon, part of Washington. And this is going to happen. The last occurred in 1700. So EPA says 55% of U.S. streams, rivers in bad shape. So good job, EPA. You did a good job protecting them. Survey finds just a fifth of waterways in good health. So you know all of the fish and all the habitat are too. As the number of dead pigs in China passes 16,000, now 1,000 dead ducks are pulled from the Chinese river. I remember covering it maybe a year or two ago about in the basically these barrels, bunch of barrels of benzene floating down the river from China into Russia, saying, "Here you go, Russians, Merry Christmas." Thank you.